Hello and welcome to the Celtic Way post-match reaction to the draw with Wolves in Dublin. I'm Aidan Macdonald and today I'm joined by Ryan McGinlay. Ryan, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing not too bad. Pleasantly encouraged by a lot of what I've seen today. So yeah, I'm pretty happy to get stuck into it and talk about the game that's just unfolded.
Yeah, it was an interesting afternoon in Ireland. Obviously, you and I did the instant analysis to the game, which is currently available on the website. And for podcast listeners, it's in the link in the description to this video. We obviously have plenty to discuss from the friendly in Dublin. But before we get into it, guys, if for anybody that's interested, the ticker tape with the information and also in the description of this video is our current subscription offer that we're running. It's £12 for a year's worth of access to the website. Support top quality journalism covering the club you all love. That includes data analysis from Duco James, Alan Morrison, videos and features from both Ryan, Tony, and myself, as well as scouting reports, which have also been quite interested over the course of the transfer window from Stuart Ross. So we really appreciate anybody that subscribes, guys. That also allows us to be able to do the morning briefing Monday to Friday, and then weekend content such as this. The subscriptions really help with that. So £12 it is at the moment, and that gets you a year, worth of access to ad light coverage on the website. So get yourself involved, guys, if you haven't already. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. So, guys, to get into this, Ryan, I guess, what was your overall thoughts on the game? We know, obviously, that we've provided an instant analysis on the website, but just as a sort of general consensus, how did you feel about the match?
Yeah, I was actually quite encouraged by the vast majority of it. Now I know that Celtic conceded a late goal to make it one each, which was a pretty dubious penalty, if you ask me. I know we'll probably get onto that later on in the video, but for the most part of the game, Celtic look. I've mentioned this in my verdict that will be going out at some point today or tomorrow. But I said if you were to tell a neutral what team was in the Premier League and what team was in the Scottish Premiership, then they would probably say the opposite of what the right answer was. Because for large parts of that game, Celtic were the ones that were controlling the play, were playing really well. Some nice interplay with the midfielders. I know we were speaking about the midfielders in particular, McGregor and Hatate. The two of them were running things for the vast majority of the game until they were both taken off. Then you probably seen a sort of a downturn in the performance, but yeah, there was plenty of positives, plenty of good performances. Kyogo's off the mark with his goals, a really well taken finish. After some great pressing from Hatate and Kyogo, good pass from Abada, and then a great finish. But yeah, there's plenty more positives than negatives, especially when you consider the feeling maybe on social media before the game when people seen the team, what team was lining up against Wolves. You contrast that to now. I think there's a lot of positives that can be taken, especially against a Premier League side like Wolves and the quality that they possess, both starting the game and coming off the bench.
Sorry, I
Oh,
was
do you
on
want me
mute
to?
there. I would agree, Ryan. I thought it was pretty positive overall. The performance, particularly given the opposition, and as you point out, the lineup, in particular the defence pre-match, I think understandably plenty of fans were concerned, firstly, because that back four hasn't played together. Welsh is obviously, I know he played against Gamble Saka, but outside of that, I don't think he'd really been involved at all since the Sydney Super Cup back last year. Scales also on loan at Aberdeen. He's kind of made fleeting appearances during pre-season, but he was by no means kind of had a lot of football under his belt in a Celtic jersey for a while. So yeah, it was definitely understandable concerns before the game, but no, I thought the defence acquitted himself relatively well. Overall, as you were talking about the penalty, we'll come on to. It wasn't really the defence's fault for that, in my opinion. Anyway, I think they were just a bit unlucky, but I think over the course of the game, it was a good workout, as Brendan Rodgers was saying at full time, and it's a good test playing against a Premier League side. So no, there was plenty of positives to take, Ryan, and fingers crossed that will stand them in good stead. I know there's also the game on Tuesday, but of course ahead of the big kick-off next weekend against Ross County.
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about the defensive, you look at that defence, two kind of unfamiliar centre halves in terms of playing with each other. I know that's their two preferred positions. I know sometimes Liam Scales does play out wide, but I think he prefers playing in that central defensive sort of position for the defence anyway. And as you were saying, Stephen Welsh is kind of been out in the cold for months. He just didn't get a look in the second half of the season under Ange Postecoglou. That's one of the positives of a new manager coming in, because there is a clean slate for players to come in and show their worth to the team. I thought both central defenders did really well. I thought out of the four, maybe Greg Taylor had the weakest game out of the four starting defenders. I thought he had a real tough task, especially against Semedo, who has bags of pace. I know Semedo was maybe struggling on the other side of the pitch with regard to Maeda's pace, but it was a very mixed afternoon, I would say, for Semedo, and it was a difficult performance, or a difficult afternoon for Greg Taylor. But he stuck at it. He didn't stand out like a sore thumb with regard to his defending. It's just one or two times I think he get beaten a bit too easily, but. I'm not going to sit here and slate Greg Taylor. He's been such a tremendous player for Celtic, especially over the last 2 seasons. So if he did have a bit of an off day, then so be it. As long as he doesn't do it when the real fun begins next week against Ross County, you could say. And then on the other side of things, I thought Iwata had another good showing at right back. I thought he looked pretty solid. I don't know if he'll prefer playing at that right hand side. I know we'll have Alistair Johnson back hopefully sooner rather than later, and Ralston too. I know he's back in training, but it is good to see that Iwata can come in and play that position when necessary. And I didn't think he put a foot wrong. I don't think he's put a foot wrong through the whole of pre-season, to be honest. And he's done himself proud with his performances so far. So yeah, I would say probably 3 out of the 4 did really well in the defence. Bit of an off day for Greg Taylor, but I'll let him away with it this time.
I think, as you say, Ryan, as long as the sort of mistakes will get cut out by the time the competitive football starts, that's okay. Iwata has been really impressive during pre-season. Obviously, ideally, you have him in the midfield, which is kind of what he was brought in to play. But and Alistair Johnson's obviously back in that scenario. But I think he's been pretty good, and it's as a backup option potentially at right back if Johnson and Ralston are out. Obviously, you don't want him to be there long term, but I could maybe someone in a way to when Christopher Ayer played at right back. I think it was for a spell at the start of the 1920 season. It's also due to injuries. He did a good job. You didn't want him there the whole season because you knew he was kind of more as a centre back, and that's where he was better. But he was able to kind of fill in and do a job when he was needed. So yeah, it just shows you that Iwata maybe is a bit of a utility player. I know he obviously played centre back, a bit for Yokohama F Marinos last season for them. I think he actually played a decent chunk of the season there, but I wasn't aware of him. Sorry,
He's played the majority of his career. When you look at actual performances, I mean, I'm taking that from Transfer Market, so I don't know if that's wholly correct or wholly accurate, but it did say that the majority of his games he was playing in the centre of defence. So it is a position that he's known for and he has played before. But I think his best position going forward to be in that defensive midfielder. It'll be up to him and Quan to sort of displace Cal McGregor in that number 6 role, I would assume.
Yeah, I think that's probably kind of how things are going to pan out unless there's any more comings or goings in those positions. But yeah, Iwata seemed to be equipping himself well on that side. He didn't get beat very often. His passing was quite good going forward. He was offering an option in terms of going further up the field. So no, it was another good showing from Iwata, and kind of I feel we always maybe say the same things about him, but he's a very tidy player, and I think we've seen that when he came on in the League Cup final and the Scottish Cup semi-final last season. 2 high pressure games against Rangers when there was only a goal separating the sides, and he didn't look fazed by the occasion at all. And I guess that you get that sort of quality when you are buying somebody that was nominated or voted, J League Player of the Year.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Iwata, especially in that defensive midfielder role. I think he calms everybody down with regard to the players around him. You've seen that in the 2 games that you mentioned. Celtic were kind of on the ropes a wee bit. I think they just conceded a goal. Iwata came on and steadied the ship and made sure that everything was going to be okay. It was a bit of a safety blanket for the midfield, both for the midfield and the centre backs as well, and the defenders behind them. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Iwata. I'm glad that he signed on a permanent deal. I know that obligation was always there, but I'm glad that did get announced and he got that sort of fanfare that he was now an official member of the Celtic team. I think he doesn't look as if he brings many problems both on and off the pitch. He seems like a guy that just gets on with his business. He's quite solid. He likes a tackle. His effort is never less than 100%, you could say. And yeah, I'm delighted that he's in and around the team, and hopefully he can continue to make good performances when when the season starts properly. But yeah, throughout pre-season, I don't think he's put a foot wrong. He's looked very composed on the ball. He likes to play a forward pass, and yeah, I'm a big fan of Watt. I'm looking forward to seeing more of him as the years go on at Celtic, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he is definitely a player that fans will be excited to see a bit more of, and fingers crossed we will get to see that across the season. Hopefully, maybe more in his sort of kind of midfield role where he was brought in, or potentially at centre back. But at least we know he can feature at right back when he's have to be called upon. So, Ryan, I guess if we just kind of go through the game chronologically, based off obviously our instant analysis that you and I conducted during the game. Firstly, Kyogo, his goal, which obviously came from really good pressing from him and Maida. They kind of won the ball back. It went into Abada, who tried to turn, but then he done well to sort of turn the other way and play it into Kyogo, and it was a phenomenal finish. Obviously, we know how good Kyogo's been. Maida's kind of featured through the middle in the first few games of the first few games of pre-season, but it was good to see Kyogo in from the start, wasn't it? And obviously getting his goal.
Yeah, it seemed like the head of the table was back where he belonged at the top of the pitch, and he got that goal which he deserved, because you seen it from the beginning. You looked up for it. I don't know if it was the black boots that he was wearing, but it gave me a throwback sort of feel. He was ready for business. He was ready to get stuck in on that Dublin pitch, which looked absolutely tremendous. By the way, credit has got to go to the grounds people that were working on that game, because it was absolutely perfect conditions for the two teams to play in. But yeah, Kyogo, it was good work from him as well, because he was pressing along with Hatate, the two double team. I think it was Mario Lemina who get dispossessed by Hatate. It falls to Kyogo, then the ball falls to Abada. And again, I think this is another showing of how much better Abada's decision making has got over the course of this pre-season. I think that's what they're working on, Abada, because all the talent is there in the world. All the talent in the world is there for Abada to show the team and show everybody watching him. It's just sometimes his decision making leaves a lot to be desired. I thought he made the right decision. He didn't take a shot. Instead, he held the ball up, sort of swiveled on it, and then passed it back to Kyogo. It was really, really good work from a winger that was sort of playing in a striker role in that position, at least for that moment. And Kyogo just ran onto it, a lovely side foot, and Josie Sa had absolutely no chance in the Wolves goal. So yeah, another really good contribution from Abada, and what has been a really eye-opening pre-season for me, I would say, for him and for a lot of the supporters and for myself, because you know I thought that Abada would have been one of the first names to leave this summer. I thought he was making all the noises and movements to say that he was going to leave the club in the summer. So the fact that he's came back, he's looked really hungry in his performances, and he's getting the goals and assists to show for it. Plenty more to come from him, but it's a really good start from him. Right before the start of the season, you're just hoping he can bring that into the league campaign and in Europe, because he can be quite an asset for us, especially in the counter attack, you would say. But you saw more of his game today and more of what he can do, being that provider. So long may that continue if he's providing goals and assists.
I think Abada's been, I would maybe even say, phenomenal during pre-season. He's been one of the
I
real
would agree.
standouts, and he is a player that you, Tony, and I all highlighted as probably one of the first guys that was maybe going to leave Celtic, just based off. Firstly, his game time was quite limited last season, and then the cup final, he was clearly emotional in that at the end, and everybody else that was emotional ended up leaving, didn't they? And Jota and Ange, etc. So I think he was somebody that we'd highlighted would be moving on, but I'm really glad he hasn't, because Rodgers he's obviously earmarked for him as somebody can develop in the same vein that he did Kieran Tierney, Stuart Armstrong, obviously in his first spell in charge. So no, I'm really excited about Abada this season, and we know he can score goals, we know he can provide assists, but the sort of being able to beat a man, I know he was a bit unlucky not to get past the guy in the second half, but it was a really good nutmeg, and he just managed to get held off. But he seems to
Mm-hmm.
be really developing that actual winger role rather than maybe somebody who was playing on the wing but ends up more acting like a number 9 or something like that. So yeah, I've been really impressed with Abada, and I'll be really excited to see how he gets on this season. He's went from somebody that was on the fringes maybe to leaving the club to becoming a really important player, particularly with the departure of Jota. Obviously, we do hope there'll be a replacement brought in on that side for Jota, given the transfer fee, of course, that the club got for him. But I think if Abada can improve his game even more so that the goals and assists are still coming, but also he's developing in the winger position, he could be a real threat for Celtic in Europe and domestically next season.
Yeah, he's shown that before. He can do it in Europe and domestically. He's showed up in the big games. He's a big game player, but I like the sort of basic. It sounds quite weird to say this, but it's almost as if the basics aren't there. But he can do the really complicated stuff. If you can get a mesh between the two of them, and if you can combine the two together, then he'll be a hell of a player for Celtic going forward. That 10 million that was quoted from Fenerbahce, you could double that, maybe even treble that if he keeps on going the way he's going. He's got everything in his locker. He's looked like a completely different player throughout this pre-season. He's came back with the right attitude. I don't think I think Abada has really shown the correct attitude when he could have easily went the other way and totally been in the huff and not show good performances, but he's not let that happen whatsoever. He's came into the team, he's got goals, he's got assists, and he's one of the first names on the team sheet at this point in time, I would say, for Brendan Rodgers. And barring an injury on Tuesday, you'd say he's one of the first names on the team sheet for that game against Ross County, and by all accounts, he absolutely deserves that chance.
Absolutely, I would be expecting him to start against Ross County, like you say, unless he picks up a knock during James Forrest's testimonial. But I guess another player who was really good today was also Rio Hatate, Ryan. Obviously, you wrote about him in your instant analysis, which is available on the website for subscribers. Obviously, the current deal we're on, it's for £12 a year. Once again, guys, we really appreciate anybody that can subscribe. Also allows us to do the morning briefing during the week and the weekend videos such as this. So yeah, guys, it's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. So get yourself involved in that if you are interested. But I think Ryan Hatate was once again very good today. He did give the ball away maybe a few more times than you would like, but we know with his game that's the case because he's always trying to break the lines with passes, get that ball in behind to Kyogo, to Maida, to even a bit further forward to Riley. So yeah, I thought Hatate was quite good today, despite giving the ball away at times, which I guess is kind of maybe just a sort of cause of the way he likes to play the game at times.
Yeah, I think that's just one of the cons that you've got with regard to Hatate. He's a risk taker. He makes the risky passes. He was trying to play 2 or 3 really intricate passes into a bad. I remember one that looked as if it was going to be on. It just didn't have enough pace on it, and the Wolves defender cut it out. But it just seems as if everything positive and good that comes from Celtic, especially in the midfield, comes from Hatate. He is the guy that facilitates things. He runs games on his own, although he does have help with Callum McGregor as well as a two-man midfield and that double pivot. But the things that I've seen from Rio Hatate so far, especially under Brendan Rodgers, the fact that there isn't those inverted fullbacks coming into the park and overloading the midfield, it gives him more space to express himself. I thought he had some wonderful touches. Yes, not all of it came off, but I'd much rather he was trying this now than being like a shell of himself at the start of the season. If he's going to make his mistakes and make his slack passes and get his accuracy into place, then I would rather he does it in pre-season rather than drop a stinker against Ross County next week. He's gauging his accuracy and he's getting that sorted. And I think you'll see next week. You could probably see a standout performance from Rio Hatate once he gets everything put into place. But I thought it was a good performance again from him. I thought he's looked really good during pre-season, and the signs bode well for another fantastic season. You've got to remember that before his injury and before the World Cup break, he looked like the standout for Player of the Year last season. It looks as if he's bulked up physically. Brendan Rodgers likes players that express themselves and are physical in the midfield, and it seems like he'll be a nice mix of both. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do next season under Brendan Rodgers, because he seems like a player that Brendan Rodgers can improve in the process.
I think the idea of Hatate getting even better will excite a lot of fans, Ryan, because we know how effective he's been in his time at the club. And you make a good point that he would have been maybe even almost a shoe-in for Player of the Year if it wasn't for the injury he sustained. So, yeah, I'm excited about Hatate this season. Fingers crossed he is going to stay. We obviously know there was speculation about early in the transfer window about potentially going to Saudi Arabia. His agent then came out and clarified that he wanted to stay in Europe, which obviously didn't exactly guarantee he was going to be staying at Celtic. But those kind of links seem to have dried up at the moment, and fingers crossed he will be here for at least another season, because he does feel like, along with Matt O'Reilly, along with Kyogo, sort of a player you could build your team around, which is exactly what Brendan Rodgers will want. Given it in the last spell, he did it around Scott Sinclair, he did it around Lee Griffiths, Scott Brown, Cal McGregor, etc. But yeah, Hatate was really positive, and today, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on next week against Ross County. I guess just to sort of keep it flowing, today, obviously, the new signings that came on, Yang came on, Kwon came on, also fans got another look at Olden Thiago home as well. I know you kind of thought, Ryan, that all the players acquitted themselves well when they came on. Yang in particular looked very keen to get involved, sometimes maybe to his detriment in terms of him losing the ball, but he was firing off shots, trying to get across in quickly. His passing was pretty solid. Kwon, a bit more understated, but he looked pretty solid in the middle of the park. He
So
played
I
a
thought.
couple of nice passes, a couple of nice touches. Odin Thiago home was maybe a wee bit quieter than the other two. I think he got a wee bit less time on the field, if I remember rightly, than Kwon and Yang. But once again, he looked pretty assured, as he did against Gambo Saka when he came on. But overall, Ryan, I take it you were pretty impressed with what you've seen in the sort of short burst of what you've seen from the three new boys.
I think out of the three, I was most impressed by Kwon because I felt like he came into that team and just didn't look out of place. That looked like his position from the get-go. Quite a big guy, you notice even on the telly. I know you can't really gauge people's height too much on the telly, but you could see through the TV screen that guy is an absolute man mountain of a central defensive midfield. You know, you've got those comparisons with Rodri. I could see bits of Busquets and Beaton. I'm not saying he's the same player before anybody labels that on me, but I just think in terms of play style, that's maybe who he'll model his game on. Yeah, I thought some really nice passes, some good sort of interceptions as well. Isn't afraid to get himself about the park or put himself about the park when there was the attackers coming on to him. For Yang, yeah, he does look a tad lightweight, I would say. There was one point in particular where he sort of bounced off a Wolves player. So maybe he might need to go on that Ryan Christie workout programme, put on a few kilos and then get back into the squad. But that's something that the physios and that can work on. You know, they're not the finished article. Both players aren't the finished article. The same goes for Odin Holm. They're both the oldest is 22 years old, so they're relative babies when it comes into the Celtic first team. So they've got plenty. They both get 5-year deals. Those two, I think. In fact, I think the three have got 5-year deals. So they're here for the long run. They're going to get developed for 2-3 years. Hopefully, become better players under Brendan Rodgers, and you know, hopefully, and at the end of those 2-3 years, they'll be far better than the players that came through the door. But early signs look promising, especially for Kwon. I can see why Celtic have brought him in for that bit of physicality in the defensive midfield position. Yang, I still want to see a wee bit more of. Maybe that'll be Tuesday night against Athletic Bilbao. Brendan Rodgers was talking about the fact that there's going to be 2 45-minute halves, 2 45-minute teams for each half. I was meaning. So I'm guessing that Kwon and Yang will get a full half to sort of display what they've got to the Celtic support at Celtic Park, and the same for home as well. Looking forward to seeing how the three of them get on. But you know, this is just the start. Their performances will get better as time goes on, and I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I think everybody's obviously like seeing the new players but when they're starting for the first time, and today was no different. Kwon, like I thought he was pretty impressive in terms of what he offered on the field. It looks like he is going to be quite a solid player, like strong in the tackle, strong in the air, which I think is what you need. You need that bit of grit in there, particularly maybe for away in the Champions League. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing how they get on. I think we would all agree, the commenters included, I'm sure that Celtic still need to do a bit of work in the transfer window in a few positions, one of which we're just about to come on to shortly. But yeah, I've been impressed in what I've seen of the guys so far, and I'm hoping that Marco Tilio is going to get over his injury soon and he can be involved, because he was somebody I personally was quite excited to see break into the team, and it's been a shame that he's sort of got a knock. But fingers crossed that he'll get over that and he'll be available. Maybe Ross County's going to come too soon if he's not been involved in training. But sort of the first few games of the season, we'll get to see a wee bit of him, because you don't want to be getting kind of got near like August, September, and guys still haven't made their debuts, because then there becomes questions about why they were signed. So fingers crossed he'll be okay. But yeah, it was pretty impressive from the new boys, Ryan. But I guess probably the last one to come on, and maybe the sort of main negative point we've kind of taken from the game, was Joe Hart's performance. Obviously, the caveat being, I don't know about you, but I don't think that was a penalty. He was unlucky there. I'd still need to see maybe a slightly better angle. From the angles I've seen, I think it was a a bit of a dive that Doherty, I think it was, for Wolves took. So Joe Hart was unlucky there. I think Celtic maybe could have done a wee bit better in terms of stopping the ball getting through, which once again is obviously not Joe Hart's fault. So taking that aside, because I don't think we can have a go at him for that. His overall performance, what was your general thoughts? Because I know it was obviously myself that did the kind of point on Joe Hart as part of our instant analysis. So just to get your thoughts, Ryan, how do you think he got on today?
Yeah, you don't want to go too hard on him because I feel like he's a regular sort of person that's going to get criticism, probably just due to his age and due to the position that he's in. If he makes a mistake, then 99 times out of 100 a goal will come of that. And it's not to say that Joe Hart didn't have good moments in the game. I thought it was a good save right at the end where it was a sort of a stinger of a shot, but he managed to take the sting out of that
Yeah, that
said
was an
shot
excellent save. That's definitely worth touching on. That was a phenomenal save at the end.
But I think regardless, I think what set the tone was at the start of the game, that passage of play straight from kickoff between Scales and Hart. Hart just kicks the ball out of play for a corner instantly. I know the two of them are probably at least partly culpable for that corner. Nothing came in the corner, thankfully, but it was a bad start to the game, especially from kickoff. Like, how did the ball get back there so quickly? And a corner was coming after 20, 30 seconds of the game. Yeah, it just shows his deficiencies on the ball. Now, I know that Brendan Rodgers won't be as focused on playing with the ball at his feet than Postecoglou was when he was managing Celtic. Joe Hart a couple of times, or maybe 5 or 6 times, was able to just boot the ball up the park, which it's just his game. He's played that for the vast majority of his career. That's what he's used to. So he'll be happy with that. But at the same time, there was a couple of moments where he looked really shaky, and then it's terrible that we could talk about the penalty in isolation, everything that led up to that, but he doesn't need to make that challenge. I know there might have been minimal contact on Doherty that caused him to go down and get the penalty. I didn't think it was a penalty either, but at the same time, that arm from Joe Hart gives the referee a decision to make, and it looks clumsy, regardless if there's a lot of contact or not. And then I don't know about you, but when I see a penalty, I just assume that it's going to go in the net, and you don't want that from a goalkeeper. You want it to be a 50-50 scenario, or maybe not a 50-50 scenario, because the goals or the penalty taker is always going to have that slight advantage. But at the same time, you want to have a chance at least when your goalkeeper is facing a penalty, and it just feels as if it's always going to go in the net when that happens. It's definitely a position that Celtic need to improve on. I would say I've been banging this drum for weeks now, maybe even months. I think Celtic do need better, especially for the Champions League. But I think Joe Hart's a good number 2, but at the moment I just don't think he's a number 1 for Celtic, and nothing today has changed my mind for the positive in that regard.
Yeah, I think with Joe Hart, really, we're kind of in the same position we were in the back half of last season, and that we know he can pull off a good save at times, but he can sometimes also be a bit culpable in that regard. And of course, with the ball at his feet, we know he struggles getting the ball out. Some I think there was one today, passed it directly to the Wolves player, and he kind of just got lucky. The guy lost control and he managed to get the ball back. I just feel in the Champions League, where you're going to be playing the majority of the time teams probably better than Wolves, as much as I do feel today was a good challenge for Celtic, there is going to be teams, if you're playing with Man City or something, the chances are you're passing the ball straight to them, it's going to end up in the net. There's teams that will just carve you open anyway. Even if you do every single thing right, you don't put a foot wrong, they'll still create goals. So the last thing you want to do is giving kind of top European teams free hits, basically, in terms of chances. So I think we would all agree that Joe Hart, look, if he wanted to stay as a number 2, that would be phenomenal. We know what he can bring in the dressing room. I'm sure he's a really positive sort of influence on younger players, in particular younger goalkeepers. But I'll be honest, and I would be quite concerned if we were going into Champions League games, or even to an extent, maybe the game at Ibrox at the start of September with Joe Hart in goals. I would worry a bit for a variety of reasons, not even just with the ball at his feet. And it's felt like for a while now, it's a position Celtic should be looking to upgrade. And I think a lot of fans, myself included, will be a bit disappointed if the club don't bring in somebody that's challenging for the first choice goalkeeper position in this transfer window. And look, he can pull off great saves. That one at the end is probably one of the best saves he's pulled off for Celtic. To be honest, it was
Yeah,
a real high quality stop, and Well, he had a couple last season. I think there was one I particularly remember was away to Hearts in the Scottish Cup, I think it was. It was sort of right in front of him, and he put his body right on the line. It was a brilliant save. We know he's got that in his locker, but sometimes I just don't even know if he does that consistently enough, Ryan, to sort of justify him being in and being able to sort of make sort of not worry as much about the ball at his feet because he can pull off great saves, which I think at times that's what Craig Gordon had. He was able to be. He did also make mistakes with his shot stopping, but over the course he was really strong in terms of keeping the ball out the net, so you could sort of make allowances at times for the ball with his feet. I just don't know if we've got that with Joe Hart anymore. And I also want to say he's been a brilliant servant for Celtic, and it's probably not an easy conversation to have because he is a likeable guy. He's bought right into the club, etc., and all that stuff, but I just think if you want to develop in Europe and longer term domestically under Brendan Rodgers, playing this sort of high aggressive, pressing style, getting the ball out quickly from the back, then I just think we need to try and do a wee bit better on Joe Hart.
Yeah, and now is the time to change it before it starts to affect results. I would say, and that isn't to say that save that he made at the end was a stunning save. It was absolutely brilliant because not only did he save the shot, but he took the sting out of the shot as well, which was a double hit, and he does have that in his locker. But I think Celtic have got to be proactive rather than reactive in this situation. You're just hoping that the fact that they were linked with Dominic Livakovic, that might not happen. He still might go to Fenerbahce. I've not really heard too many developments on that front, but I presume that he'll be going there when all is said and done, once everything's ironed out. But I think this is a position that Celtic need to improve on. While it's not an absolute necessity, yes, I do agree that it is an important position for Celtic to improve on. It's not as if Joe Hart's an absolute disaster in goals. It's not as if it's panic stations whenever he plays. But at the same time, I'm just seeing these repeated instances of things happening, and you don't want them to happen more and more. I'm fine with him being a number two. I'm fine with him being the cup goalkeeper. Or if he wants to move on, if he doesn't like that, then that's absolutely fine. But I think that Celtic do need a first team goalkeeper, a goalkeeper that's going to command that place for 4 or 5 years to come. Either 4 or 5 years to come, or 2, 3, and then you sell them on for a profit. A young goalkeeper, but somebody that can fit that bill. Because at the end of the day, goalkeepers are what are going to keep you in Champions League games when you're under the cosh, when you're facing loads of chances throughout the game, and you really need to stick in and guys to make big saves. I know that Joe Hart has made big saves even in his Celtic career. But I'm just seeing wee things that are repeating themselves, and I think Celtic should address this position, and I hope they are, especially in this window.
I completely agree, Ryan, and I think any sort of good work you do going forward, particularly in Europe, of being able to create chances and hopefully score more goals than they did in the Champions League last season, that's completely undone if you can't keep the ball out of the net. And if you're playing good teams, they are going to score. It's just the way it is. We know the sort of gap in quality there is between Celtic and your Man City's, Real Madrid's. But you do need a goalie that can give you that wee bit of an extra edge, can pull off some saves, keep games a bit closer, a bit more competitive, even if that's against the sort of second tier of European teams like Salzburg, Porto, etc. And at the moment, I just don't personally feel we have that. Once again, nothing personal against Joe Hart. I think he's been a brilliant servant for Celtic, and he had to come in at a tough time and after with Barkas, and we don't need to go into that round, but all that sort of stuff. He's done well. I don't want him to kind of get to the stage that things he does this season maybe damages his sort of legacy at Celtic. I think that would be a bit of a shame.
This is what I would say as well. We've got to separate, I think Celtic as a club, have got to separate sentimentality with results on the pitch. If Celtic are going to improve as a team, then they need to improve in positions where there are deficiencies, and I think there are big gaping deficiencies in Joe Hart's game now that cannot be avoided. I think in order for Celtic to push forward as a club, and it's no slate on Joe Hart or his game. He's been a great servant for 2 years, but at the same time, sentimentality can't come into this. We've seen that happen with Scott Brown. When we held on to him too long in the starting 11, and then his performances dropped in that 2021 season. I just don't want the same happening to Joe Hart in a real area where matches can be won or lost, in terms of people that you can carry in a team. Like maybe you can carry a winger that's off form for a good amount of time. For a goalkeeper, they've got to be in top form all the time, or results will start to be getting affected, because they're the only they're one of the only positions where they can make a difference on that defensive end. They're the only ones that can properly stop shots, especially with their hands. I know that's just obvious as a goalkeeper, but yeah, I think for the future, Celtic need to be bringing in a goalkeeper, because there isn't a number two there that is banging on the door to get into Joe Hart's place. He is very comfortably the number one at Celtic at this moment in time. I just want someone to come in, at least to challenge him, if not to take his place, and then there can be a competition between the two places. But yeah, I think it's a position that does need improved, and in this window, preferably.
Yeah, I completely agree, Ryan. I think before we finish up, just a couple of wee things. Firstly, Carol Starfelt obviously wasn't involved today. We don't know the full reason why. I believe on Viaplay, that coverage they sort of referred to was maybe on his way out of Celtic. There's, couldn't really see any fresh reports on that outside of just a couple of links back to the Spartak Moscow thing, which we'd also discussed either last week or the week before. And that kind of the way we understood was that was not going to happen, but maybe there could have been some development. I think we don't need to go too much into Starfelt. I know you obviously did a defensive Carol Starfelt piece, Ryan, recently, and me and Kevin McKenna, we discussed that on the podcast earlier this week. But I think it would be a real shame for Celtic to lose Carol Starfelt at the moment, and he's more important than ever given Carter Vickers out. Nawrocki, as much as we're excited about him, he's also apparently got a knock as well, and so we don't know how long he's going to be injured. It would feel sort of a bit negligent from Celtic, really, to be letting Starfelt go at this point. You would at least hope, if he did really want to leave for whatever reason, and we don't know that's the case, that's just speculation, they would say, look, can you wait till the end of the window so we can sort of assess with Carter Vickers and Nawrocki getting fit?
Yeah, I think despite Scales and Stephen Welsh's respectively good performances, given the circumstances today, if Starfelt was to leave the club, then a replacement would have to get bought, even after the signing of Nawrocki, you would say, because even though he is a high prospect, he's a good prospect. Celtic have paid good money for him. I wouldn't want Nawrocki to be coming in to directly be Starfelt's replacement if Starfelt was leaving the club. The only reason I would want him to be Starfelt's replacement is if he made such an impact that he was better than Starfelt, and Starfelt would then go into the bench. I think you need three starting centre halves that are going to interchange, especially given the grueling nature of the season, playing under four, maybe five competitions if you get through to the Europa League through third place in the Champions League. I just think that the options below Starfelt and Carter Vickers, not including Nawrocki, because we've not seen any of them, just aren't up to the task long term, I would say. So I think if Starfelt was to get sold, especially for good money, now we don't know if there is links, if those links have been reignited with Spartak Moscow. We don't know if that coverage was just taking the line that was used from before, that there was interest from Russia, and they were putting two and two together. But if Starfelt is to get sold, then I would expect a replacement to be coming in as well as Nawrocki, because that's a first team player, a real stalwart of the Celtic defence, and it would be a position that would need filled regardless.
Yeah, I think Nawrocki, does seem an exciting prospect, but I think you and I had sort of touched on it. We were hoping it was going to be him and Starfelt maybe challenging for a place, and that would get the best out of both players. If he was to come in and suddenly be a guaranteed starter because Starfelt's not there, that would be a bit disappointing for me anyway. And I'd be looking for another centre back in if Starfelt was to be moving on. But like I say, it's just kind of speculation, and really all it came from was that comment from the Viaplay announcer today, because I thought maybe he's just got a wee knock or something, and that's why he wasn't involved, Ryan.
I thought as well.
Rodgers was thinking that, do you want to risk him in this pre-season game when you've got Ross County at home, the competitive season starting next weekend, and we already know Carter Vickers probably isn't going to make that match. So yeah, we'll just have to keep an eye on it and see what happens. But fingers crossed he does stay, because I think he's been a really good signing for Celtic, and I'd be disappointed to lose him. Just one more thing before we finish up, guys. Celtic women were in Glasgow Cup action against Rangers today in the final. They were winning 1-0, but unfortunately lost 2-1. It's a couple of late goals. I think Rangers got a penalty in the 97th minute. It was about 8 minutes added on, I believe. So yeah, that was obviously a bit of a shame for the women's team. But they're still positive under Fran Alonso. Obviously, have plenty of things to be excited about this season. The competitive campaign for the women's team gets underway on Sunday, the 13th of July, I believe, the same day Celtic play Aberdeen at Pittodrie. So, yeah, it was a bit of a shame. That was obviously how the season's kind of started off, but I'm sure they'll be keen to sort of go again, and fingers crossed, Ryan, they can maybe even go for the league this season.
Yeah, it's a difficult start for them. Obviously, losing a Glasgow derby against Rangers, especially given their record against them last season, beating them in the Scottish Cup final to make it 2 Scottish Cups in a row. But it's only the start of the season. You're hoping that they can go and make a push for the league this year. I'm sure Fran Alonso will get them back into the training ground, get them going again, and hopefully it's a successful season for the Celtic women's team.
Fingers crossed, indeed. Once again, guys, thanks very much for joining us. We're really enjoying doing these sort of live match reactions after games. It's going to be a regular thing for the majority of the season when we can. It's sort of a new kind of part of content that we're going to be branching into for the 23-24 campaign, and we're glad you're all enjoying it so far. We've been getting some really good feedback. And if you're keen to keep supporting us so we can do videos like this, do things like the morning briefing, then subscribe to the website if you're interested. Support top quality journalism covering the club you all love. The current deal we're offering is £12 for a year, guys. So we really appreciate it. Anybody that can subscribe. The link to do so is in the description of this video, and the link of the podcast link that will be going up. It's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We appreciate that as well. Hit the thumbs up, all that good stuff. Ryan, mate, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me, mate.
Ryan will be back tomorrow with a special guest counting down his top Celtic moments. So look out for that. That'll be going live on the YouTube channel at 6 a.m. tomorrow, and it'll also be uploaded to the podcast feed. Tony and I will be back on Monday. Tony's back from his holidays, so sorry, he's not back from his holidays. That's a lie, actually. It's the next week he's back. He's still off for a bit. But Ryan and I should say, will be back on Monday to kind of maybe preview, obviously, the game against Bilbao, and also maybe chew over any more of the sort of bones from this game. So we'll see you on Monday, guys. But Ryan's back tomorrow.